Hello. Hello. Excuse me. Doing some little vocal warm-ups there. Hi. Welcome. What's up? What's up? What's up? My name's Clay. If you don't know that, that's totally fair. Um, I make music and Animal Crossing style cover songs and whatnot on YouTube. This is actually my second attempt at going live in the past 10 minutes or so. So if you are here now in the chat, boom, let me know. People sound like they're saying that it's all better. Purple Geek, thank you for that. Appreciate that. Today, I thought, excuse me, those of you who have been here both times, but now I'm restarting and I'm gonna lay out, I guess, the basics. I'm gonna be diving into the project file, my Logic Pro project file, and this is basically, you can think of this is what's called a digital audio workstation. It's where everything comes together in, for songs. There's many different there's a variety of software for such a purpose, but my choice software is Logic Pro. I've been using it since I was probably about 11 or so. So today, let's jump into kind of all the little bits and pieces and what it took to put together Your Idol. I thought this would be fun because it's one of actually the biggest tracks I've ever done for the channel. Biggest in terms of just literally how many tracks there are. So it's 397 different, think of them as voices. There's 397 different things, contributing things at different times. Many of which you will see soon are vocals. Look, we have about 100 just KK slider tracks, which granted, they are actually divided by syllable, as well as, I have some, looks like I think I have 5. Yeah. So I have 2 KKs going to each direction, 2 KKs panned hard left, 2 KKs panned hard right, meaning they're only coming out of the left and right side of your headphones. And then I have 1 lead KK along with some other funky stuff going on that I will get into. I also might explain a little bit about why I did that. But let's start. Let's go chronologically. Very excited to hear your process. I've always wondered how you've done it and done it so well at that. Oh, thank you. It's very sweet. Yeah, if you have, I should also say, for those of you who are here, if you have any questions at any time, please throw them in. I'm super down to take this in whatever direction you guys want it to go. I don't really have a plan, so actually it would be helpful. Excuse me, my flip-flop came off. I'm gonna slide that back on, and we're gonna slide right into this project. Okay, here we go. I think the very first thing I worked on when I was starting this track was the intro. And there's actually a couple different versions of the intro. I'm not going to play the official recording on the stream just because I don't want to, for whatever copyright purposes, I'd rather avoid that. But there's a version that was cut for the movie. There was a version that is cut for that was cut to send to DSPs or things like Spotify and Apple Music and whatnot. That one's actually about 1.5 minutes longer, I think. I think it's about 3 minutes. It's just over 3 minutes. Mine is just under 3 minutes because I chose to take one piece of the movie's arrangement that I liked a lot. But I still did include the extra verse and the extra half verse and the extra chorus and this like breakdown section. Anyway, and the full intro as is shown on, or as is played on the Spotify version. We'll just call it that. Even though I don't use Spotify, the Apple Music version, we'll call it that instead. Because it has this big epic intro. In the movie, they do like kind of a more subtle thing, and then I'll be your idol, and it goes right into it. But if you've listened to the Spotify version, you'll know it starts something like this. Fun. So lots of, these big voice vocal things going on. We have kind of a couple different stacks going on here. There's this staccato thing that's hitting every quarter note. This that really kind of just puts you on edge. Really sort of I guess it's the main driving element of the intro in terms of the rhythm, but it really kind of makes things very tense. Feels very tense. Kind of feels like the classic horror movie, like like whatever it is, like dissonant piano or string, like stab sound. Kind of functions similarly to that. So the way I put that together, I actually started with my own voice. And this is what that sounds like. I'll be your honor. Cool. So every single one of these, well, actually, some of these, as you could imagine, I was able to sort of copy and paste, where the chords and whatnot were the same. But every single one of these is me standing here, shouting into this mic. And I think it's a 3-part harmony. So you have 4 of me. 4 of me doing a different line. 4 of me doing one more line. And all together, it sounds like this. Then I sort of blended that in with I found from Spitfire Audio had a sample pack of like epic choir sounds. Because while this was providing kind of the boyish power I wanted, especially for these this boy band song, it didn't. I wanted something that really like was kind of a bit brighter and filled out sort of the upper register of the song, and I found these samples. Well, it's a virtual instrument, so I played these samples in. I think it's 2 parts. Yeah, they're separated by soprano, alto, and bass and tenor, and those sound like this. Woo! It's a lot of energy. That's a professional choir, not me. I mean, I played that in. I played the chords and whatnot, but so that sitting on top of this, and I think actually I was wrong. If I had to have found this first, because these syllables that I found, which are kind of, I guess, some kind of classic, they probably have some root in some sort of classical or church tradition, or I couldn't tell you for sure, but they are actually what I modeled my syllables after, which would contrast what I modeled my syllables after for the melody that plays in the intro, which is this guy. These, if you have noticed, are Animal Crossing syllables. Well, it's the syllables that KK is equipped with. So I thought, actually originally I played, after performing this in, well, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit all over the place, but let me show you quickly before I get to that. The 3 lines, because there's 3 lines, there's 4 of me, 2 on each side of your head, singing 3 different lines. So kind of remember them. I think I had notes. Oh, I deleted them, but there were notes over there of all the lyrics I created for this as I was performing it. It's the second line. And here is the ooh. Third line. And actually, I've discovered this only just before I started going live, that this guy, I believe, contains quite the error. Instead of what it should be, which is. But, you know, with all these blended together. So, sorry, I released a track with sort of unfinished. But when you combine everything, the richness of 12 voices, not to mention the other 12 from the staccato sound, the and the KK layered on top of it, the mistake kind of actually only feeds into the richness. And part of the reason why vocals sound so rich and huge and powerful when you layer them like this is because even if you're singing the same exact line, you know, your vocal cords are physically performing that every time, and it's never going to be exactly the same. They are physically pushing the air around the room and bouncing off the walls and the sides of your mouth and, you know, your lips and your teeth, and in different ways every single time. So it's never going to be, honestly, even singing the same line, I kind of think of it as like it's not even close to the same audio file. You know, like if I were to go here and sing, you know, all these are me singing the same line. So why couldn't I just do this and just, you know, copy and paste it 4 times? It's because there's, you know, an incredible amount of complexity and richness in the voice, even saying the same exact thing. So when you plop a bunch of those on top of each other, and, you know, and when you throw one far to the left and far to the right in the mix, you get a awfully rich sound, which I think was so much fun to work with. It's cool. Now, originally, I finished almost the whole song, leaving it like this, and without yet adding actually KK Slider to the intro, because I was kind of thinking, man, I was really enjoying the richness of just the human voice, and I was wondering that maybe the fact that I'm singing KK Slider's his syllables was enough of a nod to the game to kind of justify it, but ultimately decided that it would be a little bit more appropriate if I blended him in there just a little bit. So let's take a listen with him in there and all the vocals for the intro. I think this is everything. Let's see. I mean, everything vocal wise. Is he in there? I can't hear it. Let me solo this real quick. There you go. Now you can hear him. And other stuff. Super fun. Stuff like this was so fun to work on. If a bit straining on the voice for sure. How do you decide which Animal Crossing syllables to use in your covers? Do you use the closest sounding syllables to the original lyrics, or do you improvise and figure out what sounds good? Usually, I try and pick what sounds closest to the original lyrics. I'm only working with, let's see, we got na, now, way, oh, there's 2 O's. Me, there's 2 me's. So there's 7 syllables plus a howl and like a sound. Is it this thing? Little beatbox sound. So I only have 7 syllables. Luckily, they touch a couple critical vowels, so I'm able to, you know, a, u, o, i, e. It's pretty good. You can cover a lot of ground with just that. So usually what I'm doing is I'm listening to the lyrics, or if I know the lyrics, I am choosing things that match it. But there will come times for sure when I decide that, you know what, you know, 3 nas in a row here does match the lyric the best, but I think it actually sounds better if I change it up a little bit, maybe throw a me in there, or maybe I make it, I might even take liberties where I, instead of having it be like strictly 3 syllables like it is in the thing, I'll just do like 2 syllables and then add like a little pitch bend modulation thing in there, just like kind of bending the note a little bit to make it smoother or just kind of fit better with KK's voice. So I guess to answer your question, usually I'm looking to the song, and then occasionally I'm sort of taking liberties to do what I think might sound or work a little better for his very, very limited voice. So as you just heard, there's a couple other things going on in the intro. Actually, we can continue chronologically. I think the next thing I did after kind of figuring out, just seeing if I was able to achieve the vibe of the intro, that was sort of the test of whether or not I was going to be able to do this song at all. Then I was like, okay, I think I can make this work. And I decided to go through the entire track and track out all the bass sounds, because there's quite a few different bass sounds in here. You have this really heavy, I can just go through them real quick here. You have this really sort of heavy, sustained bass through the intro. It sounds something like this. And most of these are synthesized in a synthesizer called Serum. Some of them often starting from a preset and then twisting it, kind of how I might like. Here is the bass you hear for the intro. And also I think I add some of my own little custom modulations to kind of make it open and close in interesting ways. Ow. Cool. Not there. And then for the verse, I think for both the verses, we move into this, what's called traditionally called an 808 bass, which is, I think, originates from like a Roland 808 drum machine where you had these kick sounds that would be like boom. You hear it a lot in a lot of rap and hip hop music nowadays. And it sounds something like this. And you can hear how at the beginning of the sound, it's very low, and you're not going to be able to hear this. I apologize if you're listening on your phone or anything, but I would recommend headphones for this, as always. But if you can hear those kind of, when the sound starts, it doesn't really, it's not like boom. Sorry if that was a crazy sound, crazy pop on the mic. But the reason why it kind of comes on softly like that is because it is making room for the kick drum, which sits right in that spot, right? Cool. That's number 2. I guess we can just keep the kick drum in while we continue on. And then you have this sort of synth E, kind of more of like a classic synthesizer sounding bass. Actually, a very classic sort of synthesizer sounding bass. Let me see if I can. That kind of thing, that is rocking during the chorus. And I have 2 versions of that. Again, one with a slower attack sound, which is making room for the kick sound. Right? Ow, ow, ow. Sorry. Now we're going back to that 808 bass, that sustained. Cool. Now this 808 bass actually has a little bit of what you might call saturation on it. So if I pull up an equalizer here, you can see it's not it's not exactly just, these basses are usually very deep sounding because they're just like a low sine wave. They're just taking up this part of the frequency spectrum, but this one actually has a little bit of saturation on it, which means some of these upper harmonics are coming out a little bit. I can remove that and you can see what it sounds like, right? It gets cleaner as I open it up. As I open it up and stop cutting those out, you can hear some of the texture of it a little bit more. But the next one that comes in during this rise section is, if I recall, a much cleaner sounding 808 drum with a slower or a quicker decay, right? Just and then we go back to that synth bass. Moving to a really crunchy bass for this breakdown section, which is only, you'll only hear this part in the DSP version of the song. You won't hear it in the movie. Back to this clean 808. And then for the last chorus, we have what's probably my favorite bass, mainly because it does some cool slide in. We have this, it's kind of, I think I actually built it off the same patch that I used in the intro, that sustained rich bass. This guy. But now I'm using him a little bit more rhythmically. So here is what that sounds like. And you can hear I use some, did I use portamento to do this, or did I use pitch bend? I use portamento, which means there's going to be some sliding between some of these notes, like this. Fun. Again. Ooh, love that part. That's one of my favorite moments of this whole song, actually. This guy sliding up to this. It feels so... feels so, like, twisted and dark and evil and cool. Yep, and again, sort of modulating the... you could think of this as the brightness of the sound. As these curves go up, the sound's going to get a little brighter. It's going to start darker and get brighter like that. It's cool. Just giving things motion, you know? If anything stays too flat and doesn't have any dynamic to it for too long, I find things just kind of get boring. Or, maybe don't necessarily get boring, but there's just more space for expression in there, Cool. So there's all of our basses. There's a lot of stuff in the song. I don't know that I'm going to touch on every single little thing. If you guys have any questions about specifically what you want me to jump to, please feel free to let me know. But from there, I guess we will, this file is so big, it's hard to even move around it. Let me close all the KKs. Close the basses. We've been there, done that. Maybe a natural place to move after bass would be percussion. One of my favorite places to work. I love to craft and shape beats. I kind of have a tendency to like sort of miniature samples and trying to get a lot out of simple pieces. So lately I've been using percussion. This is this bus here. This kind of, you can see there's a sort of an encompassing bar going down the side of all these tracks. That means that they are all stacked together in one folder. So I can press solo here, and I will only hear everything in those tracks, but in all of these tracks. So this is the main, so here we have kind of a bunch of extra textural and energetic elements. And then here is the main, many of the main drum samples that make up this beat. So lately I've really kind of enjoyed laying them all out in a, like a drum machine designer. Like, I think is literally what this is called, drum machine designer. Yep. Because then I can, if I turn on this, I can actually, you know, I can actually go ahead and perform in these things. And I think that, again, gives me so much space for expression. And it's just so much more fun to play with things when I can actually put my hands down on the keyboard and I keep forgetting the camera's over here. I'm looking like to the left of it or to the right of it. But anyways, without all the, let's see, we got like some cinematic elements, some cinematic drum elements. We got some crashes and whatnot. Everything that's in the drum machine sounds like this. You can see what the programming of that looks like here as well. Cool. Some pretty standard sort of tropes of hip hop or trap music or whatever you want to call it. You have, I think I'm actually working with two. Whoops. Oh, here we go. Two hi-hats here. Have this one, pretty straightforward. And this one, a little funkier, but adding some kind of textural element to it. And they're both always rocking at the same time. I think the brighter one is wider too in the mix, as you can hear. If you have headphones on. The chunkier one, the kind of warmer, clickier, more mechanical one is centered. That kind of gives space for them both to coexist peacefully. And like I said, some kind of very typical tropes of trap music going on with the pattern here. You have these, I don't know what you'd call them, these going from 16th notes to sudden 30-second notes, and even whatever this is, 64th note triplets or something crazy. This sound. Cool. You've already met the kick from before. Kind of a bright, punchy, definitely not a shy kick sound. Definitely not the usual kind of, I tend to like warm sort of 70s sounding, tight, dampened kick sounds. This guy has much more punch, and you can see I even like cooled it off a little bit. It's got much more brightness. Look at that. Ooh, really chunky. Real chunky. It's fun though. It's fun to work with stuff that I don't usually go for. So the kick, what else we got in here? I think we have a couple different sticks. I don't know what that one's doing. We got this one. The main reverby sound. So on that sound, what's also great about Drum Machine Designer and Logic is I get, once I drop all my samples in there and I can affect them within the thing, I have even more control because I can then come out of it and go into, you know, it makes them all as basically tracks within a bus. So I can go here and I want this reverb sound on this, that stick. I can do that. And I can control the EQ, which is basically like how I can boost certain frequencies of a sound and reduce certain frequencies of a sound. I can do that individually per sound, which is, I mean, I can add any, you know, plugins I want to that, which I think is really cool, really intuitive and easy and straightforward. Fun. Got a kind of a snare that is sitting underneath that stick, right? Very classic trap sounding snare. Nice and fat. Just giving more body to this. Because by itself, it's a little, you know, it's a little too dainty. Cool. A couple other things in there. Oh. This is the chorus. So by this point, I've added these layers, these other really rich, textured snare sounds to really add lots of smack to it. But back here in the verse, don't quite have that yet. Here is just the that fat snare and the stick, which is nice. Then by the time we get to the chorus, we need some more energy, so we're bringing that back in. Very cool. Speaking of more energy, let's leave the kick behind, or the kit behind, as I call it, the drum machine. Which is weird that these are all called empty kits. Let's make those kits. They're not empty. Cool. Then we have everything else in percussion, which consists of stuff like crashes, reverse crashes, as in like those cymbals you see on a drum set. I guess your ride cymbal would be over here. You have reverse sounds that I just grouped into percussion for whatever reason. I have what I called cinematic drums, which are kind of big orchestral sounding punchy things like this. Whoops, zoom out. Kind of chunky and awkward on its own, but altogether kind of works. There's a stick loop in here. This is just a straight up loop that I found on some loop or some sample service. I just threw some EQ on it, cleaned up the low end, made it really bright. There's a lot of stuff in this mix that I kind of pushed the brightness on. But we got that. And then I use that same actually stick loop, I think over here. Yeah. During the chorus to add just a little bit more energy to crash sound at the start of it. Classic. Hear those sticks around your ears. Adding lots of spatial information as well. Then just because this song is so big and so crazy, I took a sample of a crowd screaming and shouting and hooting and hollering and gave it an envelope. You can see these like, there you go, you can see it clear here. These, this is basically another automation, but this is one's for the volume. So it starts infinitely quiet. It reaches its full, full volume and then dies off slowly, kind of effectively taking this crowd sound, which is just like, and making it and giving it a transient and kind of making it sound like a snare drum or something like is what it sounds like. Which, as you'll see, I'll play all the percussion and add that in. Without it, with it. Again, this song, the sound of this song is just huge. So to achieve that, I really kind of had to throw a lot of stuff at it, which was a little bit of a challenge for me because I think my taste, I don't like to have stuff in a production often if it's not like absolutely necessary. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but I like to have as few elements doing more things as possible because I find that it tends to sound cleaner to me. It sounds a little bit more intentional, If I can design a synthesizer patch that fills and gives me the vibe I want, or maybe even one or two synthesizer patches, as opposed to layering on a bunch of stuff. I think back when I was doing more work in sound design, I would every once in a while consult a YouTube video, and a lot of YouTubers out there, no shade, I love everyone, super nice, but I was getting the advice often to like, oh, you want to make something sound, you want to make your game sound design sound more interesting, you should throw some more stuff on it. Like you want your punch sound to sound cool, throw a crowd on top of it, and then a snare drum on top of it, and then a laser, and then boom, boom, boom. And you can make a sound super rich that way, but I feel like it becomes noisy at a point, It becomes a point where I don't really know exactly what this element is contributing. I don't know exactly what this element is contributing, and it sort of, to me, lowers the effectiveness of the whole product. That's all to say that the challenge of the song was, how can I do something so big, make something so big, while still playing to my that taste I just described, and not getting cluttery. So I had to kind of find a lot of different ways to fit things in, and there's also, it's worth noting that there's limitations to just the way that digital audio works. Things can only be so loud, and there's only so many. You only have one stereo field to work with. So I can put something here and there and there and there and there, but it's gonna get full pretty soon. So a lot of thought had to go into like, okay, how can I fit this here? How can I add more energy to this without just like, washing everything out? Was I utmostly successful? I think I did okay. I think I could. There's definitely, a lot I learned and a lot of places I could have improved. As I think a good example is, while we're here on the chorus, let's look at, let's add the basin. We went over this before. One of the main sort of harmonic, no, yes, I guess harmonic, but rhythmic elements of the chorus instrumentation, aside from the drums, are these like 2 16th note stabs on the first beat of each measure. So on the first 2 16th notes of the first beat of each measure. So it's bum bum. Actually, it's not. Sorry, it's not the first. It's not of each measure, but the first one is on the first beat. The first measure is bum 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 bum. And there's all kinds of stuff going on in that sound in the original track. I think the first thing I started with was this string sound. Here, let me back out a little bit. Open stabs. I'll start with the strings, right? It's actually, so it's the first, it's the 1 or 1 E of the first beat and the of the second beat. So 1 E and a 2 and a 1 E and a 2 and a. As if it matters at all. Sorry. Anyways, strings in there. Cool. Sound clean. I think I achieved that with like a Logic. Yeah, it's right here. This is the actual MIDI information. I was using Logic's studio strings. They sound okay. Relatively speaking, they sound great. Or I say they sound, absolutely speaking, they sound great. Relatively speaking, I know there's all kinds of crazy string softwares out there nowadays. But they're doing the trick here. Then I added this guy. Kind of a synthesizer with a lot of, it's a sawtooth wave, and sawtooth waves have lots of high harmonic information, so it's really bright. Well, it's kind of mellow actually, but there is bright information towards the top end of the spectrum. Here it's like kind of sizzly. And then this one. This one's not, it's actually not as bright, although that there's not as much like extreme high-end information on this sound. This sound has more of a mid-range. It's brighter in the mid-range because of the distortion on it, right? It's kind of grittier, and that one kind of sits above it, and the strings sort of populate a lot of the same space. And then again, this is where I would say, in terms of the achieving the effectiveness and as limited pieces as possible, starts to get stretched a little bit for me, because I got to the chorus and I kept thinking to myself like, oh, it needs to be just a little bigger, even with these pieces I got. So I ended up adding another brass sound to those stabs. This one. And even doubling it with a lower one. So now at this point, there actually are quite a few things that are competing for the same frequency range and even space in the mix a little bit. But again, trying my best to kind of keep things tidy and nice. Fun fact, actually, this brass sound is the brass sound that I synthesized in Serum specifically for Soda Pop. It's if you listen to that song, you hear throughout a lot of the whole thing. You hear this. It's like dum 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 dum. Yeah. Dum 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 dum. Right. Something like that. And found its way here in this song as well. It definitely is a really fat, rich sound, so it helped to kind of push the energy of this. Added all our percussion back in. Let's see, we got a little, why is it muted? Oh, I must have done that recently. We got a kind of squeaky lead sound that rounds out the fourth bar, or the fourth measure of this, I guess you could call it a long phrase of a chorus. Sort of the response to all this heaviness. It's two synths layered up. I added a little bit of like stutter effect to it to make it feel just a little bit more musical. This wasn't really something I was finding in the original song, just something I felt helped make that feel more a part of the whole song. Right, kind of builds energy into that last fourth beat. So it's like da 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 da, something like that. And with the bass in, bring our basses back in. Now we're getting somewhere. Cool. There are a bunch more vocals that I recorded for the chorus as well, because if you listen to the original song, you'll hear these like shouting sort of call and responsey sort of vocal things going on in the background. I again used some of those samples from, I think, here? Yeah, some of the samples from earlier, as well as some of my own stuff, as well as just some shouting. And that last sound is, if you guys know Jacob Collier, he came out with he collaborated with Native Instruments to make a virtual instrument playable at home with of his audience choir sound. So this is, I pulled that from that, which really helped, because that was one of the more difficult technical challenges of the song, is some of these, like, you know, at the very last moment of the song, or right before the very last chorus, starts just being like, no, with like the whole, it sounds like a stadium chanting no, and kind of singing it, and half singing it, half chanting it. Stuff like that is difficult to achieve very, organically as a single guy in a small Tokyo apartment. So I had to pull things from all kinds of different places, but I think that the effect of that was decent. And this is it. This is the beats of the chorus without KK in it yet. Coolio. Again, feel free to drop any questions you might have in the chat. I'll probably dive into like a couple more pieces of this and then leave it there, but I'm always happy to jump into more stuff like this if you guys want to see more stuff like this. I have, of course, quite a few other songs I could get into, or I could also do maybe a live stream where we get on and work on something together, whether it's a KK slash Isabel song or something totally different. I think that'd be a lot of fun as well. But let's see. We've gone over the bass. We've gone over some of the percussion stuff, some of my own vocal stuff that we threw in there, a lot of the synthesizer elements of the chorus. I guess I could quickly show you what's going on synthesizer wise for the verses. I can do that by maybe just muting percussion, muting KK slider, and see what we got. Bass. Got some like pads, some sizzly stuff on top. This, I think a very critical texture of the song is this, is that organ sound, this guy. See if I can play it without latency. Yeah. Something like that. Cool. That's just a cathedral style organ. What inspires you to start making a cover? Your question inspires me to think about what inspired me to ever do this in the first place. And the truth is I saw other people doing it. I saw, I don't remember the names of these people. If you know them, please let me know. But I remember I was on a trip with friends in 2019, maybe 2018 or 2019. And we just kind of happened upon some old videos at the time. They were maybe like already 8, 9, 10 years old, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, of someone who had gone through and, remade a couple like classic pop songs or figured out how to pull KK's voice and remade some classic pop songs. And we just thought it was so funny. And I remember thinking to myself that it just sounded like a fun thing to do, and I wanted to try it myself. And I think a lot of that spirit is with me now. It's been, I guess, 6 years since I did the first one I shared on YouTube. Wow, crazy to think about. But yeah, I think a lot of that same spirit is still in what I'm doing now. I think when it comes to actually like deciding on what songs I am gonna make, a lot of it comes down to, I guess there are two big factors. I mean, there's, I guess, a multitude of factors, but two that come to mind now are one, what do I like? What am I enjoying? For all these K-pop Demon Hunters ones I've done recently, I think I can't say these songs are like in my heavy rotation lately, but for a moment they were. I watched the movie with my partner and we really super enjoyed it and had a lot of fun doing that. So I think a couple weeks passed and then the thought occurred to me like, oh, well, yeah, this is perfect. And the other big factor is considering what people want to hear. I think one of the most rewarding elements of doing this is, at this point for sure, it has to be sharing it with people, and seeing how much people are, I don't know. I struggle I'm struggling now to, I guess, put into words without feeling too much like I'm, tooting my own horn. I don't mean to do that, but I think the coolest thing any artist can do is to move someone and to inspire them and to make them, to help them feel something, whatever that might be. Sometimes it's something that's kind of difficult to feel. Sometimes it's something that's really bright and fun. Usually, in my case, I think people enjoy these songs because it cheers them up. So because of that, I love that, and I want to do more of that and offer more of that. So I consider what people might want to hear. I look at comments and requests and whatnot. I definitely pay attention to what is going on in the musical sphere. I guess this came from a movie that was really popular. So yeah, all those elements. And then usually, like I mentioned at the beginning of this breakdown, it'll start with there'll be some like test I do where I'll jump into a project and just see like, would this, is this gonna work? Does this feel right? For this song, it was testing out the intro, seeing like, can I do this? And I did it, and I'll do this test, and then if I'm getting good feedback internally, then I follow that. I think that's also an important aspect of creating anything is following whatever pulls you forward in a meaningful way. So yeah, I forgot where I was, but let's see. I think, what was I talking about? Oh, I was showing you some of the synthesizer stuff for the verses. Cool. Let's go ahead and jump all the way. You know what? Why don't we check out KK stuff, and then we can start to wrap this up a little bit, because we have still yet to listen to his voice. In fact, he's muted right now. Let's unmute him. Bring him into the mix. Let's see. This one. Okay. For KK, boom. This is what his stuff usually looks like. Kind of looks like if you were to make like a matrix of like a matrix loading screen or whatever of MIDI regions. It would be something like this. So what we have going on, what all these little boxes are individual. Here, I'll show you one. This is one. Okay, that was not one. Let me show you this one. There you go. That's one. This is another one. This one's my favorite. Okay, there's actually a couple going on there. Again, there's layers, so I need to be careful about what I'm muting here if I want to show something specific. How about this one? Good one. That's good. These are all just single piano roll clips of him singing one particular syllable. These are all the ways of the whole song. Woo! Got a little spicy in the middle there. And they are arranged this way just because each syllable sound is quite literally a different instrument. So let's see. Hopefully you can hear this. Well, I don't need the latency thing. This is the way instrument, right? Ooh. So I have to divide everything up into what syllables. Usually what I'll do is I'll transcribe the whole melody and then go ahead and go through it and chop it up by like syllables where I want syllables to be divided, and then I'll go through the whole thing and just drag down the tracks to where I want these syllables to be, and I'll end up with something like this. And then also I'll go through and add some pitch bend and whatnot to like bend notes and make them a little bit more human and organic and interesting. Or maybe I'll add some modulation like this to some of the longer notes, or some pitch bend like this. Something like that. I find that's a good way to get a lot more expression out of his voice. So with that covered, this is the lead vocal. Quite a few things going on over here. We got a channel EQ cutting out some of the lows to make sure we don't have anything gunking up the mix. I guess I decided to bring out some of the mids. We have a compressor, which what compressors do is they will, you can set a threshold for them listening to your audio signal passing through. So, and then when an audio signal gets loud enough, when the sound, I guess in real life it's the pressure of the waves, sound pressure. When it's high enough, then the compressor works to push it down, effectively taking a signal that might be like this and making it something more like this. Kind of brings everything closer together, tighter together, you might say, which has positives and negatives. On one hand, you are losing dynamic range because there's sometimes when you really want some like big highs and some gentle lows, you know? You don't want to use a compressor to bring everything closer together and make it so that your loudest moments are basically just as loud as your most soft and tender moments. Sometimes that's not a good thing. Sometimes it's a cool thing, you know? Because what it kind of do effectively is make things really punchy and consistent, just like, oh, strong, nice, and cool. So that's what we got going on here. Compressor, I think there's actually two because one of them is side chaining to the kick drum of the song, which means that every time the kick drum, the boom, 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 every time that hits, it's actually gonna duck the sound of the vocal slightly. I know, sorry, I'm kind of going off the rails here. I find doing that can help the vocal kind of just feel like it sits a bit better into the mix a little bit if it feels like it's kind of reacting and breathing with the drums and the percussion. And then after that, in our signal chain, the very last thing that the lead vocal is going through is a bus to a reverb and a bus to a delay. I can show you what both those sound like on their own. Here's it dry first. Here is the delay. Cool. Here's the reverb, which is basically a delay is a very slow reverb. A reverb is a very fast delay. So a reverb is going to sound more just like a space, like you would clap in a cathedral. Wow. And there's big reverbs and small reverbs. Like every room has a reverb. And every cathedral, of course, has a reverb, but they sound different based on the size of the room and the kinds of materials that the sounds are reflecting off of. And an echo or a delay is the same thing, but very slow. So you have like I might not be able to explain this. I might not be able to explain this as accurately as I should, but an echo is much more, I'm receiving a more direct reflection of the sound. So that's why it's like echo, 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 right? As opposed to echo and then the sound being dispersed in a very complex room and it just kind of sounding like echo. Anyways, this is a reverb. Right? Oh. Reverb, echo, or delay. In this case, this delay is kind of fancy because each delay is being sent to a different side of your headphones, which I think is always just a way to add more. It can get out of hand actually doing that, but it's often a fun way to add some interesting information to the sort of spatial aspect of the song. And reverb again. But both of them give you this. So here for the chorus, which actually this is an effect I noticed in the original song, I have this thing going on called a formant shift. Now, what a formant shift is, I try not to get lost in the weeds here like I continue to be doing. But what a formant shift does basically is it takes, so when you make a sound, there is what you might call a fundamental frequency to the sound. So if I go la, the fundamental frequency of that is it's just the lowest note that you hear as in this case you hear it as a pitch or a tone. But above that frequency, that it'd be good if I could show you actually with an EQ. Test. Okay. This might get a little crazy. La. Right here is the fundamental frequency. La. Everything above it is what you might call formants, or they are harmonics that add texture to the sound. They make it sound, instead of just like they make it sound like la, because they contain the information of how my mouth is opened, how the sound's bouncing off my teeth and the walls and my tongue, and to make more than just la, there's more texture to that, right? So formant shift is basically a way of avoiding shifting maintaining the fundamental frequency, so that's not going to move. Because if I just took like a pitch shifter and turned the whole thing down, it's going to go everything's going to go down, which means the stuff on the top is going to get darker, right? Because it's going to go from higher frequencies to lower frequencies. So it's going to be like or whatever, you know? But also the main frequency, the la, is going to go la, which we don't want, because in this case we don't want that, because I want this sound to still have the correct pitch and melody of the melody. So formant shift basically isolates the formants, or the harmonics above the fundamental frequency, and shifts those up or down. In this case, down, which has a tendency to kind of make a voice sound more darker. Some people say they're not literally referring to like human genders, but they use the term musically masculine, and formant shifts up people describe it as being more feminine. Again, not connected to human genders or anything like that, but just a way of describing sound. So in this case, what I did is I took all these sounds, right? All this. Formant shifted it down, also added a couple other fun effects to it to make it richer, and it sounded like this. Here, I can make it a little. So you can tell it's still singing it's the same melody. That hasn't changed, but all the texture of his voice is different, and it sounds like a different character or something now, right? Kind of a little bit of a deeper voice or something. And you can hear this actually the same effect on the original song. In this case, what it does is it serves to kind of richen up and thicken the lead line of the song. So if I play all of them, if I play all of it together, right? You can hear it just barely underneath that lead vocal, supporting it. And then, of course, you have all the harmonies. Before I get into that, let me show you the other most obvious example of that same effect is in the very intro. You have, in the original song, you hear, "I'll be your idol." Right before the first beat kicks in is formant shifted down, using that same technique. And how it sounded, what I achieved was this. Which I thought was crazy, because I think this really shocked me how much this sounds like he's saying, "I'll be your idol." I remember I kept thinking to myself, man, did I leave in the original vocal on accident? But that's just KK. That's just his voice, formant shifted down, a little bit blended with his regular tone, just to kind of give a little brightness and punch to it. But take a super quick look at some of these harmonies. Again, like I told you in the very beginning, we got, I think, 5. And if you include the lead and you don't include the 4-ment shifted KK, we got 5 KKs. One hanging out in the middle. He's your main. He's driving the bus, and then you got his 4 co-pilots of the bus, 2 on either side of him, providing supplemental harmonies. Now these KKs are singing different pitches, but they are singing pitches that I choose, pitches that harmonize well with the main line, and also not necessarily I choose, but are, some of them might be represented in the original song. Some of them might be my own embellishments. Some of them might be my own takes on the vocal harmonies of the song, but those sound like something like this. So there's just 2 voices. Coming up, you'll hear 4 voices in. Right here. Ready? Ooh, 5 different notes at once. Ooh, I love that. I love how rich and colorful that sounds. The more, of course, you got to use it tastefully, because if everything was like that, it might be a little crazy. But I love the richness of that. You got some more 5 voice parts later on in the song. Cool. This actually was one of my favorite uses of the howl sound, because KK, he has, like I mentioned, he's got 7 syllables and howl and a something like that. I'm sure you recognize it. I use this in some very obvious ways in early covers of mine, like Take On Me. It's like, I'll be gone in a day you're that kind of thing. Here, I really sort of I never really tried to kind of just throw it right into the middle of a phrase like this, but I found this worked pretty well, especially with a little bit of harmony going on. Fun. All right, I mean, at this point, we've seen a lot of what's going on here. I'm gonna take a little stroll around and see if there's anything obvious and cool that would be nice to share, but I'll probably wrap up pretty soon. If anyone has, again, I offer once again, if you got any questions or comments, please let me know. Let's take a look. We went over the bass. We went over the percussion. There's a handful of like other synthetic synthesizer elements in here, like this in the intro. Right? Adding some texture underneath that bass in this. It's also getting brighter. I'm opening it up as it goes on. Ooh, it's building. Probably, I would guess that also it's a little bit written such that, not exactly, but you can see it kind of gets higher, and the voicings of these chords get higher and wider and lower, deeper, as this section goes on, which kind of also serves to build, and then kind of builds to this point, and then it kind of closes in and gets a little bit more tender as it starts to transition to the verse here. Cool. Very cool. Ooh, I love the parts with the long notes with the pitch changes. I don't remember what the proper term to explain it is, but it feels so good to my ears. Totally. Yeah, super fun. I didn't know each syllable was its own instrument. Just thinking of putting all that together gave me the vapors. LOL. Yeah, that's usually one of my favorite parts of, I mean, there's a lot of parts of this process I enjoy a lot, but one of my, making an instrumental, I'm a sucker for that. Designing, kind of sound designing all the little bits and nooks and crannies and whatnot. Love that. Once the vocals all together and assembled, I love to mix that in with everything. But one of the more tedious parts always is going through chopping, first transcribing all the melodies, then transcribing all the harmonies as I decide I want to. And then, oh, what's up, Pedro? Didn't notice it was you. Good to see you. Then I will, yeah, like I said, then I'll go through, chop up everything by syllables, pull things down to instruments, and then, I have to do that X times for however many harmonies I've got. And that usually is the more like processy part of the process. It kind of feels like I'm, I'm certainly making creative decisions, but it kind of feels as though I am, like working on a spreadsheet or something like that. It's a lot. I mean, it's great once it comes together, but that probably is the more tedious part of the process. Oh, I guess one last thing I could show you that I did. This has been an experiment I've been doing strictly since I started doing the K-pop Demon Hunters ones, is using a vocoder synth to add a little bit more, even more richness to the vocals. So I'll bounce out like a file of the lead vocal, and then I can link that up to a synthesizer like this, program it as I like, and then what I can do with that is that I can play chords on my keyboard, and they will only be articulated according to the vocal. So that means that you can achieve stuff. So I can play a chord and then have like something basically be fed into it, and then it will come out sounding like that vocal a little bit. It's not. There's a part of me that wishes this was a catch-all for just doing all the harmonies, but the sound isn't really of the quality of actually like going through and having different KK sing different parts. So I kind of am only so far using this as a technique to thicken up the harmonies a little bit, but I can show you by itself what that might sound like. So this is the pre-chorus. Make my voice it's underneath the skin. And I can show you like roughly where that's sitting in the mix. It's not a very defined vocal synthesizer, so right, like you can't really hear the syllables in there, but it does add some width and some richness to the final product, which I think it's been fun to experiment with that. How did you start learning how to do this? The Logic Pro and production stuff specifically. What I started learning Logic Pro, I want to say it was, well, I originally started actually working with GarageBand, the Mac version. When I was relatively young, I got a hand-me-down like Mac Mini or something from my dad, who's always been a Mac guy with his business, and I just liked playing around with GarageBand and having a lot of fun with that. I'd been taking piano lessons and whatnot, so it was really exciting to me to like go into a thing, have like a little, I think I had like a M Audio MIDI keyboard at the time. It was just exciting for me to go in and like press piano keys and then hear synthesizers and whatever like GarageBand stock stuff they had at the time. So I guess I could say that my first experience was actually with GarageBand, and then I got more and more into it, started getting into like EDM stuff when I was maybe 12. But I'm lucky, fortunate in this aspect that I started to do that kind of early, and then eventually, invested, saved up for Logic Pro, and been playing around with it ever since. I think a lot of the way I learned back then was watching YouTube videos. I would watch a video of, say, someone recreating a synthesizer. It'd be like how to make the Gangnam Style bass sound. I'd be like, oh, sweet. And then I would follow the video, remake it. Um, but yeah, it's been quite a while. I think this is I don't have many skills on this earth, but I think, the things I'm working on, of course, want to get better at piano and all that. But I think if I had to say what my number one skill is, it's probably just as a result of how much time I've spent with it. It's probably like honestly working with this program and maybe a little bit of mixing stuff. But yeah, I think tutorials really at the time I was just kind of following what I was most interested in. So I'd encourage you to do that. I know that there can be a feeling that like for me with piano, it's like, oh, I know that like scales will make me more technically impressive, so I just gotta do scales all the time. But I think a much more sustainable approach is, nothing wrong with scales necessarily, but a much more sustainable approach is to start with, what is it that like that calls me forward? What is it that like makes me want to do this in the first place? Um, if you're interested in learning Logic Pro or whatever, then I would take a second to wonder why that is. What kind of music do you like? And then just you don't have to you don't have to start with whatever the Logic Pro equivalent of scales are, whether that's like an online course or like a how to navigate Logic thing. Just start with like, oh, I love the song, and I'm gonna try and recreate this sound that's so cool, um, and just learn. You only need to learn what you need to know to make that happen, and then continue following that, because your heart is what will ultimately sustain you. You will burn out if you just do scales forever. If you don't like it, if you love scales, then great, it's gonna be awesome. Um, but that's, I guess, I feel silly giving out advice for something that I'm still, of course, working on much, much myself. But yeah, your question was, where did I start? I started at home on a computer, family computer, when I was probably around 10, 11. Um, Mediocre pianist playing around with synthesizer sounds. Lots of fun. Just have fun. Anyways, I think I'll probably wrap this up just about there. This has been a lot of fun. I've been a little bit nervous this whole time because I haven't done a live stream like this in quite a bit of time. But I think it's really fun. I'm excited to maybe dip my toes in something like this more often, especially coming here onto the YouTube channel where I've done a couple things on Twitch and whatnot. But I haven't streamed on my YouTube channel in a while, so this is exciting. Thanks. I thought being in music school, it was part of your coursework at some point. There is at my school, if you're referring to me going to school, there is coursework for specifically even for Logic Pro. I'm actually not taking any of those courses because I'd probably have a lot of fun in those courses, but at music school, I'm really kind of, my objective there is to really push what I think I lack, I guess. I don't know, for lack of a better terms. I want to grow at more specifically my kind of connection with the piano and with the human connection to an instrument. I want to become a better instrumentalist, and then ultimately kind of tie that in, weave that in with what I do in Logic. So I think that, there's certainly so much growth and development for me to do still here in like production stuff, but I've really wanted to turn a lot of attention towards developing my instrument, developing my piano, my improvisation. I love jazz and improvisation and funk and pop and everything. It's all cool, and I want to fold more of that language into what I do here in Logic. Um, I had a lot of fun learning your process. Hope you have a great night, day, weekend. Thank you so much. I'm super grateful that you came and hung out. I hope you guys will, well, maybe, I'll see you guys in another live stream. If you want, you can come over to I started a Patreon recently, mainly with the goal of kind of trying to unite the community a little bit better. I've noticed that it's a little bit tough to really glue together people here on YouTube. And I don't even mean by force. I mean just it seems like with the way the algorithm is built and all that, it can be kind of what's the word? It's easy for a community to kind of just dissolve on YouTube, where because YouTube, the name of the algorithm is virality, and there's not a lot of respect for things like subscribers or like following someone, so it can be hard to like I've followed people in the past who like I don't see any of their stuff anymore. And anyways, I won't get into my rant about that, but I've started a Patreon with the hopes of kind of bringing people into that. Obviously, of course, there's a financial aspect to that as well. Support for doing this stuff and spending more time doing this stuff and whatnot is a big factor as well. But if you come over there, even just as a free member, we can. I'm planning on doing more sort of exclusive content over there if you guys are curious about that. And also, you people as the community sort of shape what that is. So if you want, if you want to hear some certain songs or some certain analyzations of whatever, or you just want to jam out or just chat or whatever, it's yours and mine to create. So I think there's a link in the description to that. And I appreciate you guys so much for coming out. I hope you have a fantastic evening. I will see you around. Bye bye. Much love.